Our reading today is from The Places That Scare You, a guide to fearlessness in difficult times by Pema Chodron. She writes, "Always maintain a joyful mind is one of the Tibetan Buddhists' mind training slogans. This might sound like an impossible aspiration. As one man said to me, always is a very, very long time. This is the path we take in cultivating joy, learning not to armor our basic goodness, learning to appreciate what we have, because most of the time we don't do this. Rather than appreciate where we are, we continually struggle and nurture our dissatisfaction. It's like trying to get the flowers to grow by pouring cement in the garden. Once a cook at an abbey was feeling very unhappy. Like most of us, she kept feeding the gloom with her actions and her thoughts. Hour by hour, her mood was getting darker. She decided to try to ventilate her escalating emotions by baking chocolate chip cookies. Her plan backfired, however. She burned them all to a crisp. At that point, rather than dump the burned cookies in the garbage, she stuffed them in her pockets and backpack and went out for a walk. She trudged along the dirt road, her head hanging down and her mind burning with resentment. She was saying to herself, "So, where's all this beauty and magic I keep hearing about?" At that moment, she looked up. There, walking toward her, was a little fox. Her mind stopped, and she held her breath and watched. The fox sat down right in front of her, gazing up expectantly. So she reached into her pockets and pulled out some cookies. The fox ate them and slowly trotted away. She told this story to all of us at the Abbey, saying, "I learned today that life is very precious, that even when we're determined to block the magic, it will get through and wake us up. That little fox taught me that no matter how shut down we get, we can always look outside our cocoon and connect with joy."
Miracles, or at least stories about them, are all around us this season. The miracle of Hanukkah, of oil for a single day lasting for 8. The miracle of the birth of God in human form through a teenage virgin. The return of light to a darkened world. This time of year beckons us to believe impossible things, to gasp in amazement and be filled with wonder. For some of us, all of these things come easily. We can't wait to be swept up in the magic of the season. For probably as many of us, though, it's impossible to feel that magic in the midst of what's really going on. As a nation, we're engaged in 2 wars that have gone on longer than anyone anticipated, and we just got news that at least the war in Afghanistan will continue. Service members are returning and finding it hard to find work, to re-enter the civilian world with what they have witnessed. More and more families in our nation live with food insecurity. Children go without meals in staggering numbers. Immigrant families are being torn apart, even as the labor that they provide is key to keeping the rest of the economy running. Everyone is afraid to get sick. We know we're ruining our environment with overconsumption, and we feel powerless to stop any of those things. On the worst days, it feels very much as if it would truly take a miracle for the reality before us to change. Albert Einstein has famously said, "There are 2 ways to live. You can live as if nothing is a miracle, or you can live as if everything is a miracle." An interesting statement for a scientist to make, since miracles are usually defined as events that are unexplained by the laws of nature and often point to a supernatural deity. How do those of us who believe in the laws of nature relate to miracles? Are we allowed to believe in them? Do we want to? Let's consider the 2 ways that Einstein proposed we might live: the nothing is a miracle world and the everything is a miracle world. I grew up squarely in the nothing is a miracle world. It was a world that valued facts and looked down upon those who didn't consider as many things as fully and thoroughly as we did. We took the nightly news and politics very, very seriously, and usually there didn't appear a lot of reason for hope. I learned from this world that there would be good times and there would be bad times, and we could look to the power of our minds, the possibilities of our physical strength, and sometimes to a larger community to make it through. My father found the Unitarian Universalist Church for the family and was thrilled at being in a place full of intellectuals who were interested in broadening their minds and discussing issues of the day over potluck suppers and lots of wine. Growing up, I often heard prideful comments from our church friends about not being sucked into the hocus pocus of religion. Just the facts, just the science, just what's real. No funny business. Our minds were going to be our guides both in the moral realm and the practical one. We would be no one's fool. We'd work for the causes we believed in because if not us, who? And if not now, when? We believed in the power and responsibility to make the kinds of change that would create a peaceful and just world. No stars in our eyes, just maybe some bags under them from the exhaustion of working for the cause all the time. In a world where nothing is a miracle, there are moments of joy and awe. They can just all be explained by the steel traps of our minds or written off as coincidence. So we might enjoy those images that Rosine mentioned of Mother pulling her favorite dish out of the oven and the smell of that and the experience of being in the kitchen, or be taken by surprise by a fox in the midst of a terrible, no good, very bad day, as in this morning's reading. But we understand those as simple coincidences, simple reminders of things that we take pleasure in, and we understand our senses. We know how those things came to be. The power of our own minds, though, when they're struggling to make sense of loss or failure or the tragedies of life, sometimes are not enough. It's in those times that the nothing is a miracle world can close in on us, draw us down in cynicism, resentment, and frustration at the lack of tidy answers to file away in these great and powerful brains of ours. At its worst, following logic and reason in the midst of that despair can lead us to a rather hopeless dead end. As G.K. Chesterton points out, it's an act of faith to assert that our thoughts have any relation to reality at all. If you're merely a skeptic, you must sooner or later ask yourself the question, why should anything go right, even observation and deduction? Why should not good logic be as misleading as bad logic? They are both movements of the mind of those of us who evolved from apes. This lands us in a fatalistic place where human effort really is futile. There's no good soil on which we can nourish our hopes or reach further than what we already know with our limited minds. But what about that everything is a miracle world? I'm pretty sure that Mr. Einstein was referring to living with a sense of awe and wonder when he suggested we might live as if everything was a miracle. And that's generally pretty easy to get behind, even for us crusty rationalists. But the statement is provocative because miracles are so much more than that, really. It's hard to imagine that everything in some way might defy laws of nature that we know, and that might have to do with some force of reality beyond ourselves, beyond even our wildest imaginations. My first real encounter with folks who truly lived as if everything was a miracle was through a group of New Age spiritualists in the mid-1980s who were excitedly gearing up for something called the harmonic convergence. I was living in Albuquerque at the time, and parts of New Mexico were supposed to be part of some of the sacred portals through which a particularly rare planetary alignment would usher in a cleansing of the world and a turn toward true peace. People came in droves to be part of one of the cosmic power centers, and hopes of mysterious healings, restored fertility, even instant enlightenment brought them together. There was all kinds of scientific evidence, too, they said, supporting this idea. But what everyone was hoping for was indeed a miracle, or really every miracle fulfilled in mid-August of 1987. Some friends and I camped out that night of the harmonic convergence, convinced we would see something, what with that planetary alignment and the science behind it all. Looking back, it was a pretty comical evening. All of us sitting up, looking to the skies, looking around us to the woods for clues, chatting with a sense of anticipation so strong we were practically shivering. Did you see anything yet? Nope. How about now? Nope. Me neither. A few seconds later, was that a light? Maybe that was someone's flashlight. Are you sure? No. It went on like that for hours. But in the end, nothing. In the morning, we tuned the car radio to see if we could get word of some miraculous visions that others had had. There was none. But as I got to know the folks who were so excited about the hope and possibility of the harmonic convergence, I was introduced to a way of living and being in the world that was both utterly foreign to me and really compelling. The sense of magic and possibility around every corner was refreshing to a cynical, rationalist mind. Whether courageous or foolish or a little bit of both, those folks had taken the risk of being utterly disappointed in pursuit of their vision of what could be in the world. And even when the vision didn't come to pass as predicted, the conviction of its possibility remained. The folks who were watching and waiting for that harmonic convergence simply realized that it wasn't yet the right time. The convergence itself was inevitable. They were unshaken in their belief in that. Their job was to make the world more ready for the next chance. In the meantime, they would keep themselves open to possibility, alive to the element of surprise that could enter at any moment. Now, everything is a miracle folks can also be known to pray daily to win the lottery, or look at the bright side in the worst circumstances to the point that they lose touch with some of the very genuine human responses to tough situations, where they blind themselves to the truth right in front of them. We rationalists roll our eyes at those folks who can get through a day in which the car is towed, they find out they lost their job, and they get bad medical test results and still give thanks for their good fortune. They must be suppressing a nice long string of expletives somewhere in there, mustn't they? The real danger of that everything is a miracle outlook, taken to its extreme, is denying the very real, unmiraculous, and truly unconscionable stuff that happens in the world on our watch. It's not a miracle that women are raped, or that children and elders go hungry, or that young men of color make up the vast majority of those in prison in our nation. You have to put blinders on to a lot of stuff to live as if everything is a miracle. So what's the use of miracles? Miracle stories are universal in human cultures and faiths. We clearly have a need for them. From stories that tell of the intervention of Hindu gods in the world to holy signs of saints in every tradition, we celebrate all of those stories that defy the laws of the natural world as we know it and as we have come to understand. When we are faced with the limits of our own minds and their unsatisfactory solutions, miracles offer us a way out. They lift up a hope that seemed impossible and invite us to envision another way. As a familiar Zen koan states, things are not as they appear, nor are they otherwise. Perhaps Mr. Einstein, as a scientist engaging the spiritual, meant his statement as the same kind of koan. There are two ways to live, as if everything is a miracle and as if nothing is a miracle. I'd like to suggest that we need to do both. When nothing is a miracle, we work to hone our capacities for good. We look for the solutions to problems that we can effect with our own hard work, our devotion to one another, and to that greater good we seek. We commit ourselves to our deepest values, and we try to make them manifest in the world. When everything is a miracle, we have the opportunity to dream and imagine. We look with wonder and curiosity at what is before us and appreciate it for the gift that it is. We expect joy because we expect the good, and we receive all of it, the good and the bad, with open arms, ready to take it on, ready to take it in. We don't let ourselves be too dragged down by the things of this world because another world is also accessible. The greatest possibility that I can imagine for a miracle breaking through into the world in this time, for us to witness, is through both our hard work to build the world we dream of, rooted in a dissatisfaction with reality, and our conviction that it will appear in ways we never could have dreamed, based on our faith in possibilities we cannot know. As we make our way through sometimes terrible, no good, very bad days, we need to be invited outside the trap of our own minds. We need to hold open a space in our hearts for amazement and beauty, a dwelling place for joy. As a community, we need to do the same. Not to escape into a land of fantasy, but to hold open a doorway to another way of being, another way of seeing. As we enter into the stories of this season, let's allow for the possibility of stories not just understood as metaphors, but to invite the possibility of the impossible made real. Let's be committed to building the good through our concrete actions, and let's be ready for the world that could be so much more than we ever would dream. So may it be.